This is very sexual. This is not weakness. It's actually a display of incredible mental fortitude, so let's get into these 5 things you didn't understand in Hunter x Hunter. Hello comrade, my name is Makis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got the best anime to talk about. Boy, there is hardly a character in any media that makes me feel as conflicted as Hisoka does. Unlike Poof, who we love to hate, this Joker from Subway makes me hate myself for loving him. Is it charisma, an occasional cooperation with RMC, or the god tier soundtrack? I can't put my finger on it, which is not the case for the thirsty clown, who absolutely would put anything including hands and other appendages on whoever interests him. This gesture over here. There are a lot of angles from which you can approach it, yet one thing is for certain. It wasn't about simply killing Illumi's brother. First things first, we need to understand Hisoka's character beyond what lies on the surface. 2 things are important here. His very obvious lust for fighting powerful opponents, and a little less obvious knack for messing with people in various ways. The former is the center point of his persona. If an individual is fighting back or can potentially fight back better, he is interested, and if not, they're disposed of. Got to admit, interested is a very mild way to put it, as he does get his deck ready to be shuffled every time he faces a worthy opponent. Can we say for certain that he wants to bang whoever he wants to fight? No, in simple terms, it's the thrill of combat itself that gives him an orgasmic experience, not necessarily the person he is fighting. Cause what about him asking out Machi? Is it her skill, the no bullshit nature, the big titties? Maybe, who knows? Yet it's clear that he has some sort of attraction to her, which is different from what we've seen prior. Does it make him less of a creep or a weirdo? Oh fucking course not, what are we talking about here? But this moment was 100% Hisoka messing with the boys, please don't take it out of context, by making them very uncomfortable to stop their conversation with Bisky. How did he know what they were talking about? Well, if she can tell a like-minded soul, he sure as hell can do the same. And in the interest of his motive staying incognito, he charged his Nen with research energy similar to Wing's murderous intent. That's the latter aspect of his personality. Him being a jester of sorts, not to entertain others, but to get a reaction out of them. You see it very often with his dramatic acts, strange questions, and more importantly for this conversation, gestures. His fight with Castro is the best example of it, as he could have won without all these extra shenanigans, yet decided to go to idiotic lengths to torment his opponent's mind for his personal amusement. Speaking of which, I've recently picked up something for my personal amusement. Raid Shadow Legends, who kindly sponsored this video and provided us with some goodies that I'll talk about in a sec. Raid is a cross-platform collection RPG that is perfect for playing casually during small breaks, like with an also exciting rendering process. I personally like its team and character building aspect, especially for the PvP arena battles, where with so many variables like champions, items, talents, etc., the possibilities for very cool and powerful combinations are very vast. However, if you don't want to think too hard, Raid Shadow Legends has you covered, as they've provided us with 3 awesome characters you can get for free. The first 2 are Vergis and Rector Drath, a versatile elven tank who excels at preventing damage to your party, and an epic support spirit who can revive fallen champions on top of healing and debuffing. The third is the legendary Sun Wukong, who can dish out a lot of damage and even steal buffs. I, for instance, had to build him around lifestealing because I didn't have neither Vergis nor Rector to keep him alive. But you can. Simply download Raid with my link or with the QR code to get Vergis, play until level 25 for Rector Drath, and use the promo code Monkey King to claim Sun Wukong. Also, check out christmas.raidrpg.com for the ongoing Christmas event that gives you a chance to win real-life and in-game prizes. Then, once you get the hang of crushing your enemies, find me in our clan so we can be legends together. Now we can analyze what's going on here properly. There is a conflict of interest in this story. The antagonist wants to kill Aluka, the protagonist wants her to save his friend, and the gonist wants his prey alive and well so he can be fought later. How to make sure that everybody gets to live while Hisoka maintains his quote-unquote friendly status? By triggering Illumi to alert everyone else of his presence and then claiming it was a prank. The question is, what can you possibly say to get this kind of reaction out of such an expressionless person? don't think a simple threat will work, as he probably won't take it seriously, so why wouldn't Hisoka suggest to do his younger brother instead, followed by a gesture that means sex in Japan? Yeah, I would have freaked out too. On the topic of being upset, there is a person who, despite being ridiculed by viewers inside and outside the show, stayed calm and did his job perfectly. The referee from Heaven's Arena. I was initially surprised by how many people were hating on this guy, but then remembered how a whole stadium can boo a very interesting and technically complex grappling segment of an MMA fight. What can you do? Only explain what actually happened and hope people will appreciate it next time they see it. During the fight between Hisoka and Gon, the ref was favoring the soon-to-be floor master greatly by awarding clean and critical hits, almost disregarding the rules, for one simple reason. He wanted this fight to be over ASAP. Why? Because this swinging schlong killed 6 out of 6 of his previous opponents, the latest being literally the other day. We know that Gon is not going to die until he's ripe, not by Hisoka's hands at least, but the referee has no idea. All he saw was a murder clown going up against a child and decided to be a decent human being by doing everything in his power to get this fight over with. Yes, you can say that he's supposed to be impartial and allow the combatants to show off their skill in accordance with the established regulatory system. However, in almost all modern forms of martial arts, the referee is also responsible for the fighter's health, so here's an example of the opposite of what happened in Hunter x Hunter. Sean O'Malley versus Chris Montino. It was painful to watch, as at several points in the match, Sean delivered a dozen or two unanswered blows consequently and was even asking Herb Dean, who I consider to be a good ref, if he wanted to wrap it up since it was a one-sided massacre. Well, Mahis, he didn't get knocked out and was moving and blah blah blah. Dude, Chris received 177 hits to the head from Sean O'Malley and... Anyway. Part of the referee's job is to protect the fighter, and the guy from Hunter x Hunter did great at that. When talking about things you might have not understood in Hunter x Hunter, we can't not talk about one of the most iconic parts of one of the most iconic arcs, Gon's rage and the reasons for it. There is a lot going on here, so prepare your fingers. Daddy issues, abandonment issues, cognitive dissonance, emotional immaturity, twisted morality, unprocessed grief, self-esteem issues, misplaced anger, and a bunch of other shit that has been brewing in Gon's head finally coming out like tacos on Sunday morning. Tell me, are you going to be surprised if I say that we have already witnessed a dollar store version of this scene earlier in the show? When Nobunaga was arm wrestling Gon, he was more or less okay mentally, but as soon as this heartless killer showed emotion towards his deceased friend, our boy lost his lid. He said, "I see you can shed tears for your friends. Then why couldn't you share just a little of that empathy with all the people you have killed?" Oof. And just a few months later, he'll be healing Genthru and his buddies because he certainly is not a good friend by asking to heal Bara first and not a cold-hearted killer for slaughtering dozens of people. Gon is very hypocritical, that much is obvious, but what's interesting is the degree of his morality, which changes based on the circumstances. The higher the stakes for him and his close ones are, the lower his morality is. For example, he helps randos on the ship and even jumps overboard to save one, yet doesn't bat an eye when the examinees start dying left, right and center, not to mention letting Agon get a Pennywise experience so that he can snatch Hisoka's badge. It's very interesting, and you know what? Instead of inflating this section with unrelated rants, I'll just make a whole new video about it, so stay tuned. Back to his rage. Our main character, above all else, is a child. A kind child, but not a good one. His sense of what's good and evil doesn't align with the traditional sense of right and wrong, which results in a very black and white picture of the world. Whoever benefits/spends time with him are good, and those who endanger his close ones or become an obstacle are bad. Moreover, he'll outright ignore the negative sides of those he likes, while absolutely refusing to process that people who are bad to him can be good to someone else. Gray doesn't exist in his worldview, and there is a reason for it. Jing. By all accounts, his father is a bad person for abandoning his kid in favor of his own ambitions. But Gon can't acknowledge that because by his internal logic it will imply that Jing is overall bad and should be resented, which would have opened a Pandora's box of issues he would have had to deal with. Nobody wants to do that, a child especially, so he adopted the mindset of everybody has their own life, has their own reasons, and that's all that matters. Or in other words, being selfish is totally normal and desirable. In that moment, he didn't care about Kamugi, Pito, even Killua, because it was his emotions, his desire, and his vengeance to which he totally gives in, as in his mind, that's normal. Still, that's the consequence of his rage, not its source, and the reason for why he's so mad in the first place is Kite. Well, duh, but there is more to it. He is the closest thing to a father Gon has ever had. He saved him, mentored him on multiple occasions, explained that Jing was alive, and gave him his father's license. As much as I love the 2011 adaptation, it's criminal how they botched Kite and his importance to Gon. It's thanks to him RMC started the Hunter's journey, which led to a lot of good things that happened in Gon's life. However, it also solidified that strength or ability is all that matters to his father on account of him constantly testing Kite and his son. The Tracking Quest and Greed Island both were a challenge. Hell, even just a message from Jing had to be earned, so when Gon failed during their first Pito encounter, he took a serious hit to his self-esteem, and the fear of his father rejecting him due to weakness started to poison his mind like never before. To sum up, his rage was a combination of guilt for getting in Kite's way, grief of the first loss, anger at himself for not being enough, fear of abandonment by the person he admires, challenge of his black and white worldview, as well as overwhelming desire to get his way. Nothing mattered at that point, and he really didn't care about anything, which culminated in Gon giving up his entire future for his own selfishness. Before we get to the brightest example of mental strength portrayed in the story, let us quickly look at a certain specimen of physical strength. The 2011 anime did him very dirty, because Leorio, for the duration of the first arc or two, was the strongest out of the entire squad. Not as skilled as Killua, yet in raw stats alone, he'd give all of them a run for their money. For example, when they went to Kokoro Mountain, Leorio opened 2 gates himself after a few weeks of training, while Gon and Kurapika only opened 1. There are a few more instances highlighting his power, which we'll get to, yet I also want to say that he in general has more to his character than meets the eye. He has one of, if not the best moral compasses in the entire story, never backs down from a challenge, and pursues a very defined goal that doesn't revolve around his own person. Have I mentioned that he's not as dumb as he looks? Medical studies aside, do you remember how he solved the Majitani dilemma? Sure, he lost to the gambling girl, but can you really blame an 18-year-old for doing what he did? Also, his Nen training is not that bad either. Leorio went with a normal way of learning it and was quite successful considering he was studying at the same time. Actually, doesn't the scene where they snuck up on Kurapika means that he learned Zetsu in just 1 day? No way he would have slipped under the off-brand Sasuke's radar without hiding his presence. Yeah, he does know the advanced techniques at this point, yet he was able to throw a knife into a brick wall as if it was empowered by Shu. Put some respect on Leorio's name. Anyone yelling at Crollo knowing who he is deserves that much at least, and no amount of comic relief should take anything away from his character. Alright, on to a topic that might sound a bit counterintuitive. Knov is tough as shit. I don't blame you for assuming that my roof has started to leak, but hear me out. Dude got absolutely broken and still did his job. Like, I sometimes struggle to get out of bed just because I'm feeling the feels, while this guy experienced the most vile, abhorrent, near-death experience that left him freaking bald and said, "Fuck it, I'm going back to save my teammates." If this act doesn't deserve a round of applause, I don't know what does, cause let's break it down. Why did he even get so distraught in the first place? Isn't he supposed to be a seasoned hunter who undoubtedly saw a lot of messed up things before? Well, it's not that simple, and people are debating it to this day. We all know how aura can affect a person, Wilfin won't let me lie, so it's possible to receive both physical and mental damage just by being exposed to it. Yet, Nen users can protect themselves from such influence, and as a matter of fact, that's one of the first things they learn. Knov shouldn't have been affected by it since he wasn't even touching it, and because neither Gon nor Killua suffered much from being close to Pito, whose Nen is more powerful than Poo's. That's exactly what people are arguing. Was Mr. Sudentai protecting himself, or was he using Zetsu? I think it's the second option. No way he would have risked being discovered by activating his Nen defensively, as even without N touching his aura directly, a competent Nen user would have definitely felt his presence. That leaves only a Zetsu option, completely preventing your aura from leaking, which drops all of your defenses in favor of staying hidden. It's exceptionally dangerous because, according to Bisky, in this state, even the tiniest amount of Nen will do substantial damage, not only to your body, but to your mind as well. Our Ant-Exterminator was going in butt naked into a Flashgate's Coliseum, since Poof's aura is significantly more twisted than that of the other Guardians, reflecting his sadistic personality. Also, can we appreciate how he saw an opportunity, evaluated the risks, and went in like an absolute Chad, not knowing whether he'll be back or not. Furthermore, he didn't half-ass it. Knov ventured as far as it was humanly possible to ensure that the operation they were planning had the highest probability of success. Sadly, he, as the expression goes, found out, and we got a very realistic mental breakdown with very visible consequences. Not the Tanjiro losing his entire family and being all cheery the next morning. No, this poor guy lost his hair, weight, ability to blink, but not his courageous spirit. Anybody else in his position would have folded, teleported to his home on the other side of the world, and cried in the pillow for all eternity. He, on the other hand, re-evaluated his role to provide reconnaissance rather than fighting, and later came back to the palace, not once, but twice, to save Shoot and to inform the extermination party of their mission success, taking wounded Morel too. What an absolute legend. And the best part is that he didn't stop there, since a few days later, Knov pulled himself together in order to once again help his friend, as well as continue his work as a respected hunter. I very much prefer this type of mental fortitude over your traditional strong will that deflects all the bad things. Tanjiro is an extreme version of that, and I'm sure you can think of a few more yourself, so let me draw a positive comparison with Jujutsu Kaisen. Geto and Yuji both went through a very believable breakdown, and I like to think that Knov was the inspiration for that. It was I, Mahias, finding a way to complain about Tanjiro into the microphone. Check out Raid if you want to support the channel, and have a great whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. Kurapika means that he has... Snack up on Kurapika means that he has... That, блять, какой he has? He learned! Shit!